User Expert Series, ModelCHECK and Gatekeeping. Corey Jones from NASA will be providing this presentation, and the presentation is co-sponsored by PTC User and Punditas. So I wanted to, I know many of you have attended these events previously, but just as an overview for those of you who are new, PTC User's mission is to support, educate, and advocate. And one of the ways we do this, of course, is through this webinar series. But we also encourage you to get involved because this is all about you. Corey's going to present today. Corey is a foundational member of PTC User, as many of you are, and is always willing to collaborate and share, participate. And so it's really up to all of us. So how can you participate? Well, one is be a speaker at one of these webinars. We're trying to schedule them, monthly at minimum. And so there's opportunities for you to participate. We've been somewhat rotating them between, Windchill type presentations and Creo, but there's opportunities for other areas of PTC software as well. You can share tips and tricks with your fellow PTC users. You could participate in an upcoming panel discussion, which is going to be very interesting. And you're also welcome to send a short video on how you use a specific feature in Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, you name it, any PTC product. We'll be happy to share that with the community. If you do want to contribute, please contact myself or Madhavi. We'd be glad to help you and facilitate any method you feel comfortable with in sharing. So what's next? Mark your calendars. August 9th. 11 a.m. Eastern time, we'll have a presentation on Windchill change management. That's always an interesting subject. I mentioned to Corey this morning that his subject is just about as popular as politics, right? Just below that, well, I'd say Windchill change management is probably up there as well as far as something that people discuss. I was on a call related to Xylem this morning around Windchill change management. The PTC User Technical Community Open Forum Winter Event in 2018. It's going to be at the beautiful Wyndham, San Diego Bayside, right on the bay, looking out on the ocean and all the naval warships that are parked out there. It's January 16th through the 18th. Please get signed up. We have the discounted rate of $500 up until September 1st. So August 31st and September 1st, that's going to change. So please get signed up. We're going to have we're working on a great agenda. It's really coming along, and we're going to have 10 to 12 of our top exhibitors, ones that really interest you in working with. So by all means, please register on PTCuser.org to get access to the presentations, to the recordings, and the previous presentations. I do want to add, if you are going to register for the Technical Community Open Forum, which I encourage you to do, you're not going to see the link until you actually log in. So if you don't have an account, request an account. It's free, and then you'll be able to see the icon to register. So accessing any previous webinar information is very easy through our PTC User portal. Again, you just need a log on. You can go to the file library and you'll see a icon for PTC User webinar series, and you can access those recordings there. Also, other information like technical committees, rugs, and our partner vendors are there. Now, this is we just updated the portal. It's got a new, fresh look. So by all means, check that out. Provide any feedback, but we're also building much more content into this community, so into this portal. So by all means, be sure to check back as we evolve it, and with all your help, this will be a good resource, a very strong resource for you to leverage in your daily work. And now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Madhavi so she can talk about Punditas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. This is Madhavi Ramesh from Punditas. I was at PTC. I have known a number of people over the years who are also part of the call. And for those of you wondering why we are partnering with, why we are doing this webinar, we recently announced a partnership between my company, Punditas, and PTC User. And the reason we did that was because we share a common goal of enabling users with more information so you can be productive with the PTC software. So Punditas is a PTC partner, and what we do is deliver information, PTC product related information, just in time. So if you are looking for tips, tricks, tutorials, issues, enhancements, everything about, let's say, Creo, Windchill, ThingWorks, whatever software, we provide that in a very visual, engaging platform. And it's very personalized. And what I mean by personalized is if you are an admin type user, then you get admin type of information, while if you're an end user, you would get, all the information pertaining to your end user role, that is people who touch and feel Creo, Windchill, or whatever. And also it's very contextual based on the context that you're in. You get all of the video tutorials and opinions and customer presentations and so forth, as well as it's a very structured delivery of information. So really quick, if I were to search for the word bomb in Punditas, you would get a really nice 360-degree view of that for that particular search string. We triangulate all the information and, from a 360-degree perspective, and you can, very quickly get to the issues, videos, learn about new stuff, and also, find out what's fixed, what's not fixed, and get opinions from your peers as well. So if you are interested in learning more about our software, please do contact me. And my email is mramesh@punditas.com. And with that said, I want to hand it over to Corey. But before I hand over the webinar to Corey, I do want to say a few words about him. A number of us have been have known Corey for a long time, and I personally have had the opportunity to interact with Corey when I was at PTC a few years ago, when I was responsible for the CreoView product line. He was my TC chair, the visualization TC chair, and always gave us a great direction for the CreoView product suite. But it's my honor to have known him and also introduce him today. Corey was awarded the NASA's Silver Snoopy Award 2013. It was awarded by the astronaut Mark Vande Hei, who is scheduled to fly the International Space Station in September 2017, I believe. Now, the Snoopy Award, Silver Snoopy Award, is astronaut's own award for outstanding performance contributing to the flight safety and mission success. And under 1% of the people of the aerospace program workforce receive it annually, and I believe it's once in a lifetime award. So clearly, Corey must have significantly contributed to the human space flight program and to ensure the flight safety and mission. And I've given the link there if you want to read more about it. So with that said, I want to congratulate Corey on on his outstanding work. And now over to the NASA Silver Snoopy Award winner to take us through the ModelCHECK and GateKeeper. With that said, let me make Corey the presenter, and we should be all good to go.
All right, well, first off, thank you, Madhavi, for the nice introduction. I just have a passion for what we're doing here at the Space Center and want to do the best for our engineering group. So thank you, Ron, also for the introduction. And I believe that these type of webinars is a good way to learn and communicate and process information and have a better overall experience using the tools. So today I wanted to go through configuring ModelCHECK. It's a presentation that I did several years ago. I have updated it with some of the additional changes and a little bit more content. I will open up for any questions during the presentation. If it's something that's coming up that we're going to go over, I'll just politely ask that we hold that question until we get to a point where we can discuss it. Also, we'll be going through some live demo. Hopefully I don't cause too many trouble for myself being in a live demo, but I think we can have some good discussions based around that. So,
Jorge, could you make it full screen, please?
Is it? Oh, but it's because it's in the presenter mode. One second.
We kind of, it's...
Is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So just a little bit about what we do here. I'm part of the engineering services contract here at Kennedy Space Center. Our contract is in charge or part of the extension of NASA's engineering. Our team here of 8 members, we support all of the engineering team at Kennedy Space Center with the use of Windchill, PTC Creo, and other CAD software packages. We do have some NX and AutoCAD, but I would say 95% of our designs are done with inside of PTC products, including Creo Parametric, Creo Schematics, a little bit of MathCAD, and growing in Windchill every day. So I wanted to go through ModelCHECK itself and GateKeeper. I'm going to talk about the tools themselves, a little bit about why we have the tools, how we have implemented them here. What we're showing today is in production. We do have some efforts to update, but for the most part, not a whole lot's changed since we introduced this setup back in 2013. So for those, a brief overview of what ModelCHECK actually is. ModelCHECK evaluates the models within inside of Creo to your company's modeling standards and best practices. It allows you to update those models based on different results. And it also allows user interaction on how and what the errors are and what's the best way to create or to fix those. I personally kind of think of ModelCHECK as that pre-flight review of your model before it goes into the system or into the Windchill system for someone else to use. Does it meet your company standards, and is it going to be a solid model for the future? GateKeeper takes those requirements and validates them prior to entering into the Windchill system itself. So if your requirements are a pass criteria, check-in is allowed. If you fail your company's requirements, then it will not let you check into the system. So it does not grant you the criteria, it grants you any type of validation. It's just there to stop you from progressing if you do not have the right credentials. A little bit more about that. ModelCHECK, you can see here on the left-hand side is with inside of Creo Parametric, working with inside of your local workspace. ModelCHECK GateKeeper exists on a layer in between your Windchill server-side workspace and Windchill common space. So we'll get into a little bit more on details on what it's trying to do. I'm going to run ModelCHECK on my model. I am allowed to upload that saved model into my Windchill workspace. So I back up where I save my information. But upon when I want to check in, I have to validate through GateKeeper to get into the common space. So with no conflicts, I'm allowed in. If I have a conflict, I'm pushed back into my workspace, and then I can work on fixing those errors with inside of Creo Parametric. Why are we doing this? For us, our biggest point of ModelCHECK is three main areas: robustness, quality, and consistency. Model robustness is that model going to regenerate? Is it regenerate quickly, be as lightweight as possible for the information that it's trying to display or to document? Quality, the faster the model opens, the faster the regeneration time, the higher accuracy. I can do more things downstream and I don't have to redo or rework something later in the future. Consistency, why do we have start parts or things like that? Consistency across the agency or across your company allows for other tools to work. That being, if my attributes are set correctly and consistently, I can programmatically come up with tools to not only affect reporting, but maybe Windchill workflows and farther things down the stream. So through consistency or robust models, quality models, and consistently filled out, I can do things inside of downstream applications more programmatically and have higher success rate. Let's get into the ModelCHECK Basics right now. ModelCHECK has 7 main file types that are driving its configuration. Those 7 file types, for the most part, are really pretty simplistic. A few other ones can get a little bit more complicated, but we'll go through what each one of them is here. So the config the INIT is the initialization settings inside of Creo, or ModelCHECK inside of Creo. It defines what type of modes that you want to be able to run in. Where do your reports go? Is there any exceptions based on any type of files? And then it also sets up different parameters for the interaction between ModelCHECK and Windchill. So those parameters are directly needed for the gatekeeper portion to work. Next file is a conditional file. This conditional file allows you to have automatic selection through ModelCHECK to determine which settings to use. So this allows us to have different parameters or different if statements to determine what other files inside of ModelCHECK to utilize. So those being what check file I want to use, what start file I need to have or follow, and then a constant and a status file. We'll go through those here in just a second. The configuration file, is also a similar file to the condition, but instead of automatically letting the tool determine what condition you want to use, this is a manual selection of what conditions you want to use. So it's going to preset the configurations for the same file types as the condition, but it's the manual version of it. So you can see here in my screenshot, this is the screenshot out of the box Creo. So out of the box Creo, ModelCHECK is set up to run into 3 different modes. You could have a heavy mode, a medium, or a light mode. Out of the box, they're I would say generally accepted as best practices, but within here at Kennedy, we've greatly deviated from those out-of-the-box files and set up based on our best practices or our policies. Start file. Start files sets the standard for your models and drawings. If you think of it as pretty much every CAD package has a start setup or a start file that you use when you first start a model. In those, you have company layers, what contents are on those layers, do you have any standard default datums, any parameters, those side of things. You can see here in the example, we set up different layer names. We have also a little bit of control around what type of file names that you have, or within inside the model name itself. And then we started defining parameters and those conditions around those parameters. And we'll get into that here in just a second. Check files. Check files are the backbone of ModelCHECK. This is where you're going to determine what checks you want to run and how to report the problems that it finds. So ModelCHECK allows you to have different settings in this check file depending on what mode you want to run it. ModelCHECK has 4 main modes. I'm allowed to run it as interactive. I can run it in a batch mode. I can run it after a regeneration. I can run it with inside as soon as someone saves. I can run ModelCHECK as they save. In this check file, you also see that it has metrics. So here's where I would define if we want to track those different checks and provide metrics to a metrics server. We're not going to go into much detail about that today, but the main batch or the main files or types that we run here at Kennedy is interactive and regeneration. Currently, both modes are exactly the same, except for some specific only regeneration type checks that it will only available within inside a regeneration mode. Madhavi, how am I doing? Am I going too fast? Do I need to slow down? Or?
No, this is great. Perfect, I think.
So the final 2 types of files here for ModelCHECK configuration is a constant file. This constants file allows you to set different standards based on your units. So there's usually only 2 different constant files, a metric and a standard English type. Here you can see I define, or within the company we defined, what's a short edge. Within inside of models, this is more around the robustness of a model. Does it have a lot of broken short edges? Is your accuracy bounding low or high? Mainly, this is pretty set standard, and we don't deviate it from it very much. One thing to think about here that is a little bit interesting is the number of items on a sketch. So I can, within inside a ModelCHECK, define, do we want to have 100 segments within a size sketch, or would you like to limit that down and say maybe you should try to keep your sketches under 20 different segments? Status file? Yeah.
I just wanted to point something. I had a question. If you go back to your I think it's your check. I've been trying to get unmuted. You go
sorry, no
one
problem.
more. The metric.
That's a little bit of delay. Sorry.
Oh, okay. On your metric.mch, you're talking about metrics, and metrics is what saves out to report, so you can actually look at things. But if people are going to download this slide, add that M to your config_init.mc at the very top. You talk about interactive batch regeneration save on the very top bullet. If you go all the way up to config init. Yeah, but right there, but you don't have metric.
Yep.
So.
The reason I left metric off here is it's not really a run mode.
Oh, that's
the
true.
run modes. The run modes itself are I can only run these 4 types of run modes, but inside of the check file, I define if I want those metrics to be reported out or not for those specific checks. So that's the only reason I left it off there, but I understand.
Okay, no, that's perfect.
Yep. So I am trying to pay attention to the chat window. So if somebody does have a problem with getting off of unmute, if you just throw it up on the chat, I should be able to hopefully catch it. Madhavi is going to help me with that too. So if you have a question and you just want to throw it in the chat, that's fine also. So the last setup file is a status file. What this allows you to do is basically control the stoplight color within inside of the ModelCHECK report window, and you can define how many errors are acceptable to have a green stoplight, a yellow stoplight, a red is basically that you haven't run ModelCHECK itself. So here we do not allow any errors into our system. So in our opinion, an error is always going to be a red. So here, some companies do allow to have errors as yellow. So if they say maybe they allow 2 errors and it would come back as a yellow light and they can move forward. For what we've done, we're asking for all of our errors to be corrected before you can go forward. So. Let's break off here and I can go through a little bit of a demo file on what some of the different checks are and how those are done.
So Corey, one of the questions, what values does NASA set for the number of items on sketches?
Oh, I guess I don't see that question, but what was it again, Madhavi? I'm sorry.
What values does NASA set for number of items on sketches?
So from my experience, the more complex a sketch is, the more issues you have with regeneration and that regeneration rate. So a good example, let me bring up something that I can show. So how many people have heard that I can name that tune, and they're coming off and saying I can name that tune in 5 notes? Well, we've had some people in the past that come in and say I can model that that part in 6 features. Well, 6 features always isn't a good number to have, or not always a robust model. So this plate that I have showing you right now, I could model this whole plate in 1 feature. I believe that that's a bad idea because of the fact that regeneration or different types of associations or references could fail with inside of a sketch. So if I was to try to sketch all of this in 1 feature, it may be 500 segments. So if you can determine with your company size and what products that you are creating, a good number for the sketch entities, the better success you'll have from around a regeneration standpoint. So that comes back into so that goes down into this robustness and quality standpoint around a model. You want a model that will actually open, but then the quality and the regeneration success rate is something that we're trying to progress.
Corey, there are a number of questions. Do you want me to read them out now or later?
Yeah, I can't see any questions right now. It only comes up, or at least I don't see how I can see them. So go ahead, Madhavi. We can go through questions now.
Okay, so does the GateKeeper component get installed on Windchill server or the workspace client machine?
So I'm going to go through that here shortly on configuring the GateKeeper side. Right now, I'll go through the ModelCHECK side, and then I'll go into the configurations of the GateKeeper portion itself.
Okay. In the check.mch file, when you define relations to be added to a model if missing, will ModelCHECK override existing relations or append to them?
Okay, good question. So let me. So this one has relations are commented. So let's get to a point where we have a bad relation. So I'm just going to delete that relation, and then I'll rerun ModelCHECK. So ModelCHECK itself was pretty accurate around relations. There's a certain few key aspects that I'm requesting or working with PTC to kind of update. So right now you can see my error, the code is relation_miss. So this is reporting back that there's missing relations. It comes back and reports that this line is missing. I can select that line and then hit add, and it will update the relations. So if I go back to relations, it did add that line. It happened to be the last one. Oh, great, backup started. It happened to be the last one, so it added it at the end of it. If it was a post-regeneration line that was missing, it will also flag that, but it will not add it to post-regeneration. Right now, it only adds it to, I would say, which is the standard initial relations, so you can see it added it back. But it did not put it into the preferred or the correct location under post-regeneration. What we've done to mitigate that issue here is, instead of directing our users to utilize ModelCHECK to update relations, we have some standard map keys that we've created. So here, they would come back and run this map key, and it would update the relations and put them into the correct spots. So that is something that we're working with PTC to hopefully improve functionality in the future. Any more questions, Madhavi?
Yes. So I have some difficulties to run ModelCHECK Interactive for models with family table. We had big difficulties. The only way to run the ModelCHECK was to open every instance and run model. If you have 100 instances, it was supposed to run individual every instance. Does that?
Okay. I can speak about that.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a good model. So we had a similar problem. We did find a couple workarounds for it. It's not always the most straightforward, and there is a little bit of limitations. So let me get to a generic that doesn't have too many. So not the best model in the world, but it is a family tabled part. We have a couple different things. So if I run just the ModelCHECK Interactive as the questions, it only checks the generic file. So this file matches right now, but say I had an issue at one of the lower, maybe I overwrote one of these, or one of these holes in one condition fell off of this block. One thing to think, or one thing to know, is that if you run ModelCHECK through a regeneration mode, it will, with the proper setting, go through and verify all of the different children. So you can see here, when I ran it in a mode where I just run interactive, it doesn't go and do anything from a lower level standpoint. But when I run in a regeneration mode, it did go through and validate and check each individual family table instance. I'm getting an error right here just because this model's not checked out. It's read-only. But if I was to move forward, this would allow us to go through and update each of the files. There is a setting for that you have to put in the initialization. And it is this MC region verify family table instances. So this is an initialization file that you need to have to be able to run that feature of ModelCHECK Regenerate coming up. So you can see within inside of this file, let me close and let's just open. You can see here at the very bottom on the left-hand pane is the family table line that you will have to have for ModelCHECK to check the family table instances. So I apologize. One tool that I use a lot for our ModelCHECK configuration, I use and compare a lot of files, so I use Beyond Compare. This allows me to compare not only folder contents, but it also allows me to compare text files. So I can compare what was out of the box to what our configuration was. That's why I brought this up this way. So hopefully it was able to see and understand it.
There are a lot of questions, Corey, so let me know if I should go through the questions or what do you prefer?
Is there a way I can see the questions, do you know, or?
You should be able to yourself. Can you check in the questions section of the GoToWebinar?
So I can see things that are chatted with or sent to presenter, but not with. I'm not seeing anybody else's chat.
I am not sure. Maybe we need to figure that out before the next thing. I don't know how that works with GoToMeeting.
Okay. So I apologize about that. Maybe we should go through a little bit of the presentation, and we can always come back to some of those. If you see one that does pop up exactly or kind of focused on what we're talking about at the moment, feel free to interrupt, but I don't want to jump around too often.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go into talk about each one of these files types, the first 7 file types here. So the config initialization file, you saw me bring it up in the other tool, but hopefully this one's a little bit easier to understand. I'm using Notepad++ here. It does a pretty good job of editing the file and keeping a consistent view. So you can see here the very first initialization. Do we want to run ModelCHECK or enable it within inside of Creo? We can turn it off or you can turn it on. The next portion is what modes do you want your company to be able to run. So here right now in this one it's just an interactive mode. You can have metrics turned on. It tells you what files or where to put all the reports. But then some of the other key aspects that you have to have on for GateKeeper to work, and I'll make sure I document these on the presentation that we send out. But ModelCHECK, we need to have this add date. So GateKeeper looks at the date that you ran. It also looks at the error parameter. So it will create a parameter in your models called MC errors. It'll also add a parameter for the configuration that you were able to run in. So if we go to Creo, you can see underneath parameters that if I sort, you can see a few different parameters that ModelCHECK needs to be able to run, or GateKeeper itself. So ModelCHECK, model_check puts the date time that I ran that ModelCHECK action on. MC_errors tells me the number of errors that I had when I ran that file. MC_config lists out the config files that it ran to configure ModelCHECK. And then MC_mode tells me what mode I ran ModelCHECK in. And then it'll say MC region or interactive or batch mode here. The last file or parameter that it updates is MC verified. This is just a Boolean, yes, no. Was the model run ModelCHECK on, or that iteration, since it was last changed? So here it says yes. If I cancel out of that and I make a change to this model, it would say no. So anytime that model actually changes from the saved portion, it will flip back and forth Boolean-wise to no every time that that model is changed. Next file type is the condition file. That condition file gives you different types of ways to determine automatically what setup you would like ModelCHECK to run under. PTC did a pretty good job of lifting out some examples. So these first few lines are examples that ModelCHECK uses, or that PTC supplied with inside of the out-of-the-box configuration. The next lines are lines that we added here on how we would want different setups with inside of ModelCHECK to run. And I'll get into this a little bit more once we get into the GateKeeper and why we are setting up ModelCHECK. But basically here, I can say if, here in this case, a parameter is equal to something, determine what setup files to run. So I can change the check file, I can change the start file, I can change constant and statuses. Here, the only status we have is just one. We do have a different constant from an inch to a metric, but I can move forward going through some other examples and come back to this. Next portion, the set configuration file. This is pretty much out of the box for us, but it allows us to, or this file is not out of the box, I'm sorry. My example on the page was out of the box where maybe you want a heavy, medium, and light style. So from a ModelCHECK standpoint, that's some of the simpler files to start with. Some of the more complicated ones now, and what you need to have your discussions around your best practices are going to be the start files and the check files. Start file is pretty basic. I'm going to go ahead and use our base part. So here we determine what layers that are in parts, what parameters. On that, with inside of the parameter, I'm able to determine its type. So here for cage code, it's a string. And then I can also put a few conditions on that. Here, LT stands for length. And then I tell it determine what length I want that cage code parameter to be. So each one of these parameters in our start part, we've gone through and determined not only its type, but then any conditions that we want to. And they are a cumulative list. So you can see for drawing class, we say that there must be a parameter called drawing_class. It's a string. It equals a list, where I'm allowed to determine what the appropriate allowable entries are. But then I can also add another line and say that the drawing_class is a string that is equal to PDM. So this allows me to say that it's basically designated for Windchill to be able to grab it. in the same file, we go through part relations, any standard views that I want, but then I go into any conditions for assemblies and also for drawings down lower. I don't want to go through all of the different possibilities. PTC did a pretty good job of listing them all out in the help file, and I want to show quickly how you get to those.
So Corey, can you explain how you can have multiple lines for ID code?
So we'll get in that one. I'm going to get into. It's pretty significant on how we have configured our policies here. So that's a good question, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to push that one off until a little bit farther down. I think it needs to have a little bit more in-depth discussion around that initialization or the condition file. So I'll get to that. Good question.
Just another question. Will ModelCHECK add parameters to a Creo model?
Yes. So I can add parameters to a model. Let me go into, and I'll show how that'll work real quick. Check out this part.
Those of you who have other questions that came through, I will get to them towards the end if I did not pick them up now. So.
Okay. So let me rerun ModelCHECK because I changed my model. So here I'm using Creo 4. I was using Creo 2 earlier. So now I can see that I have a missing parameter that allows me to come up and say I didn't meet the check called start parameter, which I lay out which parameters are in my start file. It then lists those. And the confusing part here, this is something our users struggled with, is I do have an add button, but I have to tell ModelCHECK which ones I want to add first. So no, I have to select the parameter that I want to add, but then I have to give it some kind of value for what it needs to add. So in this case, I can put in the cage code, which I know. So K Space Center cage code is 22264. And then I could hit add, and it would add it to the model. One key aspect to understand that if I wanted a parameter to be of null value, so you may have some parameters that you need to be there, but the value may be acceptable to be null. I have to type in the word null into this box and then hit add, and it will add it. So you can see down here in the line, cage code was added and it was designated to PDM. If I go back, cage code is there. In this case, I'm not sure why I don't. Oh, I didn't have it capitalized. That's why. So that brings up one good example. ModelCHECK is very finicky on context, case context. So because I didn't put null in capitals, it actually filled in the value with null. If I put null in capitals, it would have put a blank value into that string. So that's a key aspect that I've learned along the way, the finickiness of ModelCHECK itself.
There was a comment related to that, need to at least add a space at a minimum. So somebody commented that. And two questions, Corey. One, can you share which version of Creo and Windchill you're using? And just another question on the MCS file, would you use a part template, PRT template instead?
So what was the, we're currently using 10.2, but we're migrating to 11 in 2 weeks. So all of our GateKeeper and ModelCHECK configurations from Creo 2 and Windchill 10.2 were copied over with actually very minimal changes through the migration. So right now, there was not anything major that we needed to update from Creo 2 to Creo 4 or from Windchill 10.2 to Windchill 11. And I missed the last part of your question, Madhavi, sorry.
Let me just go back. On the .mcs file, would you use a PRT template instead?
So this start file, I believe this is the one you're saying. So it allows me to define for parts and for assemblies and drawings within the same file. We can get into a little bit of how we manage this. We do have some files that I control the starts just as drawings or assemblies, or even down here to a specific harness. So we have different files for different uses. And this is a good part of the presentation and down a little bit farther along. So I'll get into that, and hopefully we'll answer all those questions.
Okay, great. So can I just hold off the questions until you, because a lot of people are waiting for the GateKeeper. So can I just hold off the questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, so let me, I'll skip along and we'll come back based on time on some of these, because one thing that I think I need to express real quick, the help file for ModelCHECK is pretty good. It'll list out every single check that you're allowed to utilize. Since all of these configurations are, for the most part, text-based, or I believe editing them in text-based is the easiest. If I want to learn about a check, they've done a pretty good job of explaining what it is and what their recommendation for the settings are. So with that being said, I won't go through too many of the checks, but we can move on to some of the gatekeeper function. So gatekeeper. Go to presentation mode. So gatekeeper is run through Windchill. There are Windchill preferences that you determine based on your context. So you can set these 5 ModelCHECK Windchill preferences based at site, or in a product, or in a library, or in an org. So those, if you set these preferences at site, they would propagate down to all of the orgs, all of the products, all of the libraries. If you set these settings at org level within inside of Windchill, they would go down to those products within inside of those orgs. We've done that here. What we've decided to do for the most part in production is our production organization within inside of Windchill. We have set and locked each one of these different preferences. So each of these preferences goes through and looks at a different parameter that we just went through. So ModelCHECK validation is a Boolean yes/no. It specifies whether or not ModelCHECK is going to be performed at check-in. So the validation of, are you enabling gatekeeper or are you not? So in this case, you can see at this context level of the org. So our org called Ground Special Ground GSDO is set to yes. So what this would mean is, for this context, gatekeeper is turned on or initialized. The configuration, ModelCHECK configuration, is looking at it, and it could validate for each lifecycle state and determine what type of configuration you wanted to run. So that being meant is, what kind of combination in your condition file did you want ModelCHECK Gatekeeper or for Windchill to validate? What check file, what start file, what constant or what status file you want Windchill to validate all of your models with, so all of your EPM objects. This allows me to have several different types of answers. I can come in and define one constant, where if I have one configuration, every single model, PTC Creo model, would be checked against it. We leave it blank because we want ModelCHECK to configure itself and then move forward. ModelCHECK mode allows Windchill Gatekeeper to validate what mode you ran ModelCHECK in. So you saw when I was in Creo that it said that it was an MC_regen. What that says is what mode did the user run ModelCHECK under. So here my values that I can set, I can disable this check. I can make every user run it in interactive mode. I can make him run it in a specific explicit regeneration. I can always make them regenerate. I can make them run ModelCHECK in a save mode, or I can make them run it in batch. We have currently disabled this check, but we are looking for or under investigation to move to a regenerate explicit so that they run ModelCHECK under regeneration mode. We've had a few issues with some models getting checked in, not regenerated. So we're investigating that right at the moment. ModelCHECK number of errors. This preference sets the number of errors that your organization wants to allow the model to be checked in. So if I had a model with 1 error, and this value set to 0, it would not let me check in any objects. However, if I did change this to, say, 1, my model has 1 error, it would allow it to be checked into the Windchill system. One thing to keep in mind is it does not specify what error, it just allows the number of errors. So in my opinion, some errors have a higher value than others. So maybe circle references is a higher value error than a spelling error or something like that. So we can get into a little bit more interaction back and forth. So let's close that down and go back to Creo. So what's inside of Creo here, I'm going to go ahead and show where these preferences are. So under Utilities, I'm going to come to Preference Management. Once I get to the Preferences Management, I'm going to go ahead and just check, search for ModelCHECK. These settings are underneath Operations, Check-in Operations, and then you can see the different ModelCHECK GateKeeper settings. So the big one here, ModelCHECK Validation, specifies if GateKeeper is going to be on or not. So here we set that to yes. The next one, Configuration. We do not specify a configuration for our setup. ModelCHECK Mode, we don't specifically validate what mode they ran in, but we do validate that they have 0 errors. One antiquated value that's still around, this is from a Windchill 8.0 standpoint, but I can define when was the last time ModelCHECK ran on a part. I'm not sure why they really wanted this, but what they would allow to do is look at the timestamp and say you haven't run ModelCHECK in 24 hours or some setting, and kick back GateKeeper at that point. We don't currently use this. We just use GateKeepers turned on, and you're not allowed any errors to check in. So let's go into a little demo of how that actually works. So this model here, I'm going to go ahead and activate my window, save where I'm at. I'm going to go in to check-in. I'm going to go ahead and say custom check-in so that we can see a few things. So in this case, I have my view set down to set for check-in. You can see my model that I'm wanting to check in. I can also get a few different table values. Some values that we've added to this table, I've added the attribute for ModelCHECK errors and for ModelCHECK verified. What we found is this helps our users understand what they're doing and what they're asking for when they're checking in large workspaces. So in this case, I have run ModelCHECK on this model. It knows that I have an error right now, but if I go ahead and try to check in anyways, the file is going to allow to be uploaded from my server or from my local workspace to my server side, but you can see now my check-in has failed. So my upload was started, my upload succeeded. Once my check-in started, it came back, my check-in failed. Let's go look at what failed. I get two different options. ModelCHECK failed where, okay. I'm not sure why we still get two, but now it's telling me why it failed. The number of model errors is greater than the permissible. In our case, we say 0. I showed prior to checking that this one is at 1. So this is the gatekeeper functionality that is built into Windchill. It's a no cost options or preferences, but this is the gatekeeper function. So let's go fix that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and run ModelCHECK again. It came back and said I had a buried feature. I can use ModelCHECK to highlight the features that I'm having an issue with. So you can see here, it looks like there's two holes on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. The one thing that people, oh great, sorry. My machine that I was remoted into for Creo to work just went down. One of the great aspects of demos. 1 second. Sorry about that. Let's go back to my PowerPoint. I have a little bit of a slide here. So you can see, going back through what we have here, in this case, ModelCHECK was not performed. So instead of saying yes, it would have said no, and it would not allow me to check in a model that was not ModelCHECKed. So while I'm checking out why my remote session failed, are there any questions? I know, Madhavi, you have a lot of questions around this portion.
Yes. Do you want me to go on with the questions?
Yeah, my remote session failed, so Stephen, my great partner, is looking into what's going on.
Okay. Can the check-in restriction be dependent on model status? Example, concept can be checked in, but in work cannot.
So that's a good question. It still won't let me, sorry. So you can check in from a status standpoint for a life cycle, but I'm not sure that really would allow you to do anything based on your access policies. If something is in work, you should, I believe that's when you would be actually checking in and check out. But if it was something along a release or something, I'm not sure that would be really applicable, if I understand the question.
Well,
go ahead.
I think what they're trying to say is only certain things can be checked in, like work in progress cannot be, but in work cannot be checked. But other, let's see, I think he clarified it. Oh, okay. Can the check-in restriction be dependent on model status?
As in regenerated or not? That status?
Yeah, he says concept can be checked in, but in work cannot. Maybe I'll open up the audio later so we can clarify.
Let's, if you were that person that asked that, let's make sure, let's get on a telecon, or I can open up my email, or I'm even glad with taking some phone calls later on this week and discussing that. We've tried to do some of that in the very beginning, but like I said, the access policies were a little bit easier than ModelCHECK to do that. We just didn't want to give the rights to anybody to modify something that they didn't have rights to modify, so there's no need to stop the check-in. We don't look at state. We do look at regeneration status to make sure that the model was actually regenerated, but not from a state standpoint. But I'll gladly take a discussion later with that person that submitted that question.
Okay.
So here I'm back into Creo. So we fixed that buried feature. One thing a lot of people have an issue with is ModelCHECK is very state-based. It modifies the values when I run ModelCHECK itself. So I have modified this model from the last time I run ModelCHECK, even though my window is still here. So I have to rerun it. So I ran ModelCHECK now. My error is gone, but remember that the parameter in this model was just modified. So my parameters of MC config, MC errors, MC mode, MC verified, and ModelCHECK were all just rewritten when I ran ModelCHECK. So the one thing to keep in mind, and this is a common mistake that a lot of our users will come back and say Creo and Windchill are broken, is that now I've run ModelCHECK, I have to save that file. So if I say, look at save, now I can save that model, and I'm going to go look at it with inside of Windchill. So I've modified this model here. I believe that's what I'm on. 583. So I've modified this model here. If I scroll over, we've also added a few different columns to our standard tables. ModelCHECK verified is set to yes. ModelCHECK errors is set to 0. So if you remember back to our Windchill preferences, if I go to check in this part now, I can revalidate that those are still yes. So yes, ModelCHECK is verified, and the errors are set to 0. Check in. Standard operation uploading first, and then it should get through the check-in. So upload was succeeded. Check-in started, check-in was succeeded. So it's a very simplified view or a simplified demo of what GateKeeper does. If I was to check in multiple things with the columns, it allows me to very quickly determine, is GateKeeper going to stop me from checking in this part? So you can see on this top one, verified is set to no, so it would stop me here. If there was one with an error and no, this model would also stop me from checking it. So it's a very simplified example or walkthrough, but from an overall concept, GateKeeper itself is very simple. It's just looking at a few parameters and making a determination if those parameters make or meet the pass-fail criteria. If it's a failure criteria, it won't let you check in. Any new questions, Madhavi?
Oh yeah, there are a ton of them, and it's rolling too fast. So I'm learning how to use this because I don't use this webinar thing very often, except for this webinar.
So hopefully, what will happen is you can capture those questions, and I'll take it upon myself to respond to each one of them. And if really needed, and if we're having a hard time getting through all the questions, I will gladly follow up and go through and just say, hey, here's some questions, here's something that I need to clarify, and we can have another one of these sessions. That's no problem whatsoever. We've got
a number of people requesting for another session. Maybe we should do that. We should do that, Corey.
Yeah, that's really easy. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, okay, I'm just going to pick questions randomly here because there are like literally a lot of them. Okay, the last question, can we get his email for follow-up? I think you said you will share that and we'll have a follow-on as well.
Yeah, no problem.
And then MC often tries to modify components in an assembly, which is a problem because they're not checked out. If you save after each run of MC, how do you avoid these modifications?
Great question. So let me go back to my Windchill or my remote desktop. This bracket that I've had is pretty simplified. This bracket is part of another model or part of an assembly. So great question. Maybe I changed that bracket. Maybe I made it, let's just make it a little bit, let's make this whole. So I'm going to go ahead and check out, I'm going to make this hole bigger. So I'm going to make this a 1/2 inch hole. Go back to our assembly. Close that. And then maybe in this assembly, I'm going to put the pattern. So if you can see in here, we changed the hole and then I added another bracket. So from a Creo standpoint, I've modified two things. I've modified the bracket and I've modified the assembly that bracket is in. I can run ModelCHECK all levels, and what this would do would run through and run ModelCHECK on every single part, assembly, subassembly, within inside of this assembly on screen. So you can see it's a pretty significant model. I think my workspace has around 6,000 objects in it right now because of family tables, different screws, different washers, different things from that. So we handle this on two different ways. ModelCHECK has an option to check unchanged models or not, and we found that it's very finicky. So what we recommend all of our users to do is, if I go back to my workspace, I'm on a view of just my modified or my checked out items. If I switch it back once it comes up to just a standard all, what we recommend and what we've set in our preferences is that if I didn't check out the model, go ahead and let Windchill lock it. What we found from that standpoint is, even though ModelCHECK will still quickly look and see if this model needs to be ran on, because it's locked, it won't let it. So that's kind of our way around ModelCHECK right now on how it's trying to update or to check some files that it shouldn't see that haven't been modified. It is a bug in the software. It's something that I've asked PTC to look into and hopefully correct. But the workaround right now from a simplistic standpoint is just to lock the models that I don't have checked out. So you can see I have about 6,000 models in here, but if I go back to a default view that I've shown, I only have around 15 of them checked out, or maybe even 3 or 4 modified right now. So that's the easiest way around that shortcoming of ModelCHECK right at the moment. similar. Do you have any other questions, Madhavi?
So since you're manually saving after running ModelCHECK, okay, what happened to that message? Okay, since you're manually saving after running ModelCHECK, is the user prevented from making other changes between ModelCHECK run and saving? When or how does the ModelCHECK verify get reset to no?
So every time that I, so let's, let me get a different assembly. So I have a frame weldment here. And another tool that we've asked or showed for all of our users is I have added ModelCHECK verified and MC errors to just the table view, so you can see what's inside of my model tree, the status of everything. So I'm going to go ahead and run ModelCHECK all levels. It's going to go through and it just checked my assembly. So you can see here my report page, ModelCHECK is reporting back on this assembly. I ran an interactive mode. It knows what configurations I ran into. I was the one that did it. If I hit assembly models, you can see that it ran ModelCHECK on all of my subcomponents. So in this case, if I hit save right now, depending on your Creo setup, you could specifically saving just this one file, or you can save all the related files. So one thing that we have gotten our users used to, and on my own personal change, I changed this. We've got all our users into the habit of saving changed. What this allows them to do is to save all of these models at one time and verify that they intended to change those models. When I intend to save those models, now from a model tree standpoint, if I go back, sorry, I'm getting more messages, and I go into Windchill, you'll see that all of those files were set to yes. I did forget to check out some of them, so it may not update them all, but now that frame model is set to yes and 0 errors. So I would be able to check it in. So let's, Madhavi, does that answer that question?
Hopefully it does. If not, please let us know. And can I go through the questions, Corey, or do you have more presentation?
We can go into some of the presentation a little bit more. What time frame did we go to? We're going for another
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So let's go through some presentation real quick, because I want to get into that whole why the initialization file is so complicated and what it's doing. So part of our robustness that we worked here, we have different types from production to prototypes. We have different types of drawings, from equipment drawings to facilities. We also have different models to WT part. Is a model an owner to a WT part, or is it just an image? So each one of these things defined what kind of ModelCHECK we want to run on. So basic question here, production versus prototype. There are basic things that we don't want. So we don't want circle references all the time. If we have missing references, we want ModelCHECK to error that. We want to make sure in this case, no matter if it's a production or a prototype, that it's fully regenerated. We don't want any model within our system checked in not regenerated. But maybe on a prototype, we don't mind frozen components. Maybe a geometry check on a plastic model is okay if it's in prototype mode. Layers. If I'm working on it every day from a prototype standpoint, maybe we don't mind if there's layers that are not blank. But each one of those things in a production atmosphere, we don't want frozen components. We don't want layer status to be viewed production. Some of the other things, maybe it's from an equipment, maybe if it's like flight hardware that's going to touch a vehicle, we want different settings versus when it's not. So what this all allows us to do is determine what checks for what type of things, what starts for different things, and then is it an inch, is it metric, or is it going to be in feet and inches? So each one of these different combinations changes our condition file. So I could have a base part production. It's going to be a base type, so it's just a regular model, and it's inch. That condition is maybe condition 1. A base model that is a skeleton that's in inches is a different condition. So each one of these types of checks that we changed for different uses or for different types of models allows this condition file to grow very big. So if I bring up my condition file real quick, you can see that our condition file in this atmosphere is almost 150 lines long. So what we've decided to do to determine all of these different conditions, we've come up with a parameter that we call ID code. And this ID code parameter is set within inside of models, assemblies, and drawings. And it dictates to ModelCHECK what to do in that condition file. So the condition file looks at this code and changes the checks file, it changes the start file and the constant file, and allows the model to go forward. So back to Creo. If you look in my parameters, I have a parameter called ID code. This one is set to 010 because it's a weldment, and then it allows me to run ModelCHECK and change my different settings. So if I set here, you can see my configuration. I have a base model, base part, inch, and in this case, it says it's sheet metal, which is incorrect. So I'm going to change that ID code and show that it changes the different configurations. So I'm going to change it to, let's see, 230. Now when I run ModelCHECK, I don't have to restart. I don't change anything else. But in this case, it changed my check file to be concept checks. So I determined that I didn't want to run certain checks in this case. I had different start files, but I'm allowed to change that all based off of that one parameter called ID code. This ID code, we have also set this to be designated to Windchill. So this allows us, when we're in a Windchill atmosphere, to have different ID codes set for different models and different uses. So maybe for a concept standpoint, one rule that we have in place is a business rule that won't allow you to create a change object on a model that has a concept ID code. So this is a way for us to check downstream that the model was able to be checked in and verified, but it won't allow us to go through different gates or different business rules within inside of the Windchill system. So this is a key concept for, I would think, from what I say, is our success within inside of our ModelCHECK and Windchill system here at Kennedy. And I know that's a big concept, and I'm sorry that we are running short on time, but it allows us, this ID code allows us to configure ModelCHECK. It is an input for business rules, and it also is input for different simplified reps. So all of our hardware has an ID code that is set to a certain style, and I can go to a no hardware web or put different rules very easily within inside the system. It also aids on making sure people understand what type of associations to make. If a model is a concept model, it may not always have a WT part. and they can see that kind of standpoint within inside the system because that model is designated to the Windchill system. So I know we have a lot of questions around that. Maybe Madhavi, do we have a hard stop, or are we allowed to continue on if people want to stay? I'm open-ended right now. So
we could do that. You could continue. Of course, it's being recorded. So if you want to continue for another 10 minutes, that should be fine, Corey.
Okay. Did you get any questions around that, or do you want to open up the audio? I'm open for either way.
Okay. I can read out some of the questions. I mean, for the folks on the line, you keep your questions coming. I'm just randomly picking questions and reading it off wherever my, as I scroll through this long list, so wherever my cursor stops. Maybe I'll just take a couple of questions. Can MC or Windchill mark a model read-only automatically based on access permission?
The lock standpoint will not based on access control. If you do have it set that to automatically lock things that you do not have checked out, if you don't have access to check them out, obviously they are going to be locked by nature. So I'll show real quickly where that is. I can show that in my personal preferences. It could also be defined at the org or, so if I just say locked. In the workspace checkout, there is an option to automatically lock objects added to the workspace. So in this case, if I can't modify it or if I don't implicitly check out, it will lock everything that's added to my workspace. So this is a Windchill function, not a Creo function. Next question, Madhavi.
Yes. Can one not prevent check-in, say at a concept state, due to ModelCHECK score, but instead prevent a state change?
So if I understand the question correctly, can ModelCHECK stop check-in because it should go to the next state? That one I'll have to have some questions about. I mean, we can. That one I'll have to have a little bit more discussion with the person who asked that one.
Okay, there are too many questions for me to open up because I'll have to do it individually. So perhaps we should, we'll have another session, like I said. Can a smart user use a local MC to get 0 errors and be able to check in and bypass the Windchill ModelCHECK?
Great question. So the good thing is that what we've done within inside of our startup of Creo is inside of this startup, we robo-copy the ModelCHECK configuration files directly to the user's session. So there's a couple different things in there. ModelCHECK, you can actually define who is allowed to change the configuration or not. You can also set it at a network location and then not allow them access to that network location. But with other things in our Creo startup that we want to define, like the cache name and cache location, we utilize RoboCopy right now to copy in the ModelCHECK configuration every time that they start up Windchill, or start up Creo, sorry. So if we wanted to make a change to ModelCHECK, we basically just invite all of the users to restart Creo, and it pushes all the new setups to them. Good question. We have the next question, Madhavi.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute there. The current ModelCHECK version is rather dated. Have you received any commitment from PTC that the product will be improved? We believe that ModelCHECK, especially for MBD, is becoming more and more important.
I agree with that, and I was talking with Madhavi about this topic yesterday. There is a focus group, so those that have been part of the TCs will see that on the PTC community, there is a focus group around ModelCHECK. If you want to be part of that, if you go to the home on PTC community, here on the browse, there's working groups. If you click on working groups, you can see that there is a ModelCHECK, in this case called focus group, and there is some progress being made. We're trying to develop requirements right now through the PTC user community and the TC or technical committee members also. So if you want to be part of this focus group, you can contact myself and I'll do my best to get you vetted and added to this focus group. If it's something that you want to pass along your company or your requirements, feel free to email me directly and I can take those through the working group process.
Corey, I think I found a way to send those questions over to you. Are you able to see the questions?
Oh, there we go.
I know you figured it out.
Oh, wow. It's hard to see.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do here is Madhavi and I will work to get all the questions, and I'll put them in a spreadsheet and try to combine similar questions, and we can follow up. Maybe even Madhavi, if you want to follow up, I don't know what your schedule is, but we could talk about a quick follow-up even as soon as next week.
Yep.
We could try to answer all the questions.
Sure. There are like literally tens and tens of questions, probably 100 questions or something like that. So it's hard for me to read through. So we really appreciate you, sending your questions, and apologies that we are not able to answer, given that we have over 400 people that have signed up for this webinar. So.
Oh, wow. I could see what you were saying about the questions. That's hard. That's a hard way to look at them all.
Yeah. So is there?
I'll commit to making sure that we try to answer every single one of them. And like I said, if somebody wants to reach out directly, they're more than welcome to.
Great. Do you have any other closing comments, Corey? I mean, I hope you went through whatever you needed to.
I've got through a lot of the presentation. It didn't get through every single slide, but hopefully, for the most part, some of the tips and issues are pretty easily utilized or looked at. Like I said, the biggest thing is just understanding that ModelCHECK is static. When you hit the button, you have to save it. If you needed to fix something, you have to rerun it. From a gatekeeper standpoint, the functionality with inside of Windchill is pretty simplistic in my opinion. A lot of it comes down to understanding mainly this type of slide here of at what point, what checks do you want to run? What start files do you have? And then what constants? Do you have metric or inch? Do you work in feet? If you're a company that just works in one of those, it'll greatly reduce it. But for the most part, you can look at your start parts, understand how complicated your start parts are, and then go from there and determine what checks you want to have and when. Another key tool that I've used a lot is that Beyond Compare that allows us to take a file for something. Let's see. Let's look at checks. So I'll take a base part and compare it with a concept part. So I can quickly compare these two check files. So you can see in this top right-hand or left-hand corner, any red line here is a difference between one and the other. So you can see for concept, parameters, we're just giving them warnings that they don't have the correct parameters, but for production, they're errors. Same thing, suppressed components and suppressed features, errors for production parts, warnings for concept parts. So this tool allows us to really quickly make sure that our configuration is what we want it, and to call out and to quickly see what is acceptable versus what is not, or what one check is set to versus the other. Without this, it was very complicated. I'm glad that I found this compare tool. So Madhavi, I'll go ahead and roll the dice for the next 23 minutes. If you just want to open up the audio, hopefully we can all be civil and go through, and I'll take any fielded verbal questions right now. If you think that's acceptable, if you aren't comfortable with that, we can open it up.
I needed to run to another meeting, but okay, I've opened up the audio line. I know a few people have raised their hands, so Lance, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, okay.
What was my question, Madhavi?
Oh, okay.
Oh, I just want to let you know, to let people know, I don't know if you touched on it, Corey, that workspace lock is not a common space lock, so other people can actually check out the file.
Right. Yep. That's a good point. The workspace lock is just local to me. What can I change versus what I don't want to change? Good point.
Okay, and I'm going to mute another person. Nate?
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me? Oh, there's a lot of background noise. Let me try one more time. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, hello Corey. I'm Vinit Kadam from ITT India Technology Center. And in my organization, even though the ModelCHECK is the best, but it is not used by all users because not having the awareness. Now in Windchill, there are lots of part files which are not as per the model practice, or you can say as per the standard PRT file which my company has. Now if I decide to add ModelCHECK to all of these PRT files, like suppose quantity 3000, then how I should go for it? And my second question is how much time probably it will take to complete the ModelCHECK activity for all those files?
Okay, so good question. We had this similar problem. We had thousands of models inside of Windchill when we decided to implement this. We have been going back through and using JLink and also some Windchill APIs that we can run through a list of parts that when the JLink checks out the model, runs ModelCHECK. In this case, for the most part, just runs ModelCHECK, and then we've turned off GateKeeper for that context, and it checks it back in. Because of the interaction mode that you have to fix some models, we're just trying to get down through a list. Say we had 1,000 models in one context, we would run this JLink app or Java tool to check them out, run ModelCHECK, and then just check them back in. That allowed us to understand how many had errors and how many didn't. And then we went back through and we can somewhat programmatically guess what some of those errors are. Like if I updated some parameters, we can actually run map keys to fix a lot of those errors. Not all of them, because not all the checks, you still have to look at your checks on how you fix it, but you can use ModelCHECK Update to fix some of those for you. and also batch mode is a good way if you're offline to be able to run ModelCHECK. From a time frame standpoint, it was like a 6-month project that we ran through, but a lot of it was we started off knowing what we wanted to, but then we had some errors or some issues with inside of ModelCHECK to get up and running. But I would say if you have a documented best practices, it's going to be pretty quick. A lot of it is discussing those best practices and determining them after or what your company has for a best practice. Getting ModelCHECK configured to the best practices is pretty easy.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you, Gordon.
Can I just take one more question and we can wrap this up? So I've just opened up for Khalid.
Yes, hi all. Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple questions, but I know you only want one. So we've got a need to take a user-defined parameter and report it to ModelCHECK. Is that something that we can do with out-of-the-box ModelCHECK?
User-defined parameter as in like what in this case, what would it be?
Well, let's say that we want to figure out, say, the number of features, and we populate a parameter with number of features, or perhaps a level of complexity, or something we would like to have in the metrics reports. Is there a way to publish it like we can publish, say, total sheets in the ModelCHECK?
So within ModelCHECK, if I go back to, let me go back to my presentation.
And the key thing would be to have it show up in ModelCHECK metrics report, not just to add, yeah. Okay.
So here you can see, let me go to this presentation mode. So there's a few different things that ModelCHECK goes back and actually in the check file what you report. You can see if that check is an error. So check the item, if it's not succeed, report an error, or a warning, or just a yes, no. So I can tell it don't check at something, or I can tell it yes, go ahead and check the item, but don't report an error or warning, just report out the item. So if I do that, and I go back and I look at Creo real quick, for the most part, when you look at Creo, it's going to give you a status as in what are your errors, what are your warnings. But if you look at this info ball, these are the parameter or checks that it reported back and giving you different kind of just information only. So here, non-start parameters. Here are all the parameters that are in this model that weren't defined in ModelCHECK. Here's all the parameters and their values. And this can be pushed to metrics. So I can push to metrics different values of parameters.
Okay. And that's
in your specific case of number of sheets, I'm still struggling with that one personally myself.
Well,
so,
yeah, the total sheets is actually a hard parameter that we can output in the checks file. But what I was looking for is a custom parameter that we invent, and
these are any parameter within inside the model itself. So if I went back and just created a parameter and just called it Jones, I gave it a string value of Corey. Say OK, run ModelCHECK. It will report back that value of those parameters into whatever it was and give you back that parameter information.
And in the MCH file, I just have to state to push that to ModelCHECK or the metrics?
The metrics, yep.
Okay. All right.
So you can
Thank
see
you.
there's a parameter right there that I just created on the fly. It doesn't have any configuration. It's just part of the reporting back of information within inside the system.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll look at that. That's interesting. Thank you. And my other question, if I had a chance to ask it, is regarding locks. We've had an issue of even though we have the initial add to workspace locked objects, but when we come to update the workspace on an out-of-date object, it releases the locks. So the user has to go back and manually lock the files. Is there a way to get around that so that it sustains even after an update?
No, that's another thing that we've asked PTC to look into from a tech committee standpoint. The other negative portion around lock is even if I set that parameter and I still just went and manually went through like here to my libraries, I navigated to a library and I said download and I open that model, the download doesn't lock, but the checkout, if I was to add to workspace, it would. But if I just open it here and it downloads itself, it doesn't lock it also.
Understood.
So that's another thing that we've asked PTC to enhance or to look into.
Yeah, and the file open out of Creo the same way too. Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Corey, once again, thanks so much. And of course, there are a number of questions, and possibly we should do a live Q&A session if possible. I don't know how we would work it out, but maybe we can work that out and see, you know, instead of a chat windows, we can do a live Q&A session in the next week or two. So.
Okay. Yeah, let's Madhavi, let's you and I follow up Friday if we can, but I'll I see the questions that are on here now, and I'll try to get the best way possible to get them out to something that we can go through. But yeah, I am kind of in shock that everybody had so many questions, but I understand it's a topic, and we can go through it. No problem.
Yeah, sure, great. So thanks everyone for taking the time to attend this webinar. Hopefully you found it useful. I think it's a very interesting topic, and Corey, you did a phenomenal job covering it. And we appreciate your patience, and we'll get your questions either through the email or perhaps through a live session. We'll figure out how to do that. Maybe we'll do first of its kind and see how that works out. So thanks everyone, and you have a wonderful day, and see you soon. Bye.